Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Howdy. Are carbs, carbohydrates, are they good or bad? Are they essential? Well, that's kind of the direction the show is going to go down today. I'm Red O'Loughlin. We're here on Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And we have essential fatty acids. We have essential amino acids. What does the word essential mean? Essentially, it means that our bodies cannot make them. We can't make them, so we have to get them from food. So we have certain foods we eat. It has raw materials in that food. Our bodies take 2 or 3 or 4 of them, mix them together, and we end up with a product. And that is the way those essential ones are needed. So if I need an omega-3 fatty acid, my body doesn't make it, but I can take it in as a food group. If I need a vitamin E, well, I can't necessarily do that. It's essential, but there's more to the story than that. So why don't we go ahead and let me get my slides lined up here and we'll get ready to start. Talk today about what essential carbohydrates are. But when we look at the big world of proteins and fats and carbs, we're kind of looking at what I would call a biochemical diversity. There are a lot of things that build our muscle cells, support our organs, contribute to maintaining blood pressure, brain clarity, all sorts of things. These things come in. We look at it from the perspective of a macronutrient. In other words, it's the one that takes care of the large scale foods and our large scale processes in our bodies, our energy that we need in order to survive. But we also have other things, the micronutrients. Those are the things that actually get down to the metabolic processes, the molecular level. So if I'm looking at the system-wide, the macro, I'm looking at things that I use for energy, repair, adaptation, signaling, general maintenance, and those kinds of things. But we have a tendency to lump everything when we think carb into whatever, corn, wheat, rice, potatoes, beans, but they're not a carb. They are actually a carb-containing food. Because like I say, vegetables are the same thing. Would you consider spinach a carb? Most people not. But when we hear our nutritionists say you need your whole grains because you need your carbohydrates, that's kind of a misnomer. Because when you start looking at some kinds of foods, if they're a raw kale, for instance, it's unprocessed. But if you start getting something that's been processed because now you have cereal or some other product that's actually been something done with rice, you have processed, and now things are added in there for texture and flavor and preservation and stuff. All sorts of things are going on, and sometimes we don't need all those extra things. So let's move on down the road. If I were to take a look at what is essential and what isn't, I would have essentially two ovals there. On the left-hand side, I have my essential amino acids, which come from proteins, and my essential fatty acids are fats that we need. We don't make either one of them, but we need them. Our bodies can't survive without them. But if I said, what are my essential carbohydrates? They're essentially none, zero. There are no biologically essential nutrients that come from a carbohydrate. Now, again, don't confuse the molecule of a carbohydrate with a food group containing carbohydrates, 2 different animals. But as far as a carbohydrate being essential for our health, not needed. I would ask the question, well, how do Eskimos live for generation to generation and never have a carb? Well, our bodies require some carbs, yes, but our bodies also have the ability to take and convert protein or fat into carbs for those situations that our body has to have those kinds of carbohydrates. But do I need as many carbs as I'm getting every single day? No. I can remember mid 90s, I read a bunch of Atkins books on no carbohydrate or little carbohydrate. And I think I read 5 books, and I said, this sounds interesting. So I went on, lost 42 pounds, 7 inches around my gut, kept it off for years. And I was just a happy camper because I was eating no carbs. I was living in Germany the last couple of years of my military life. I go down to Italy for a weekend. I'd pick out on pasta and bread and all sorts of stuff. And I come back 10, 12 pounds heavier. 2 weeks later, I'm back down to my weight again. So the carbohydrates have the ability to put on water weight. They have other things that happen too. But it's something you don't, we like carbohydrates because of the way they taste. And I love pasta, but the thing I had the most difficulty with going on a carb-free regimen was bread, for whatever reason. I'm not talking about the sliced white bread. I'm talking about ciabatta bread or French bread or sourdough. Had a really hard time with the bread. Everything else, generally not a problem. So what is really found that we would consider essential today? So I look at essential nutrients. Okay, vitamin C, almost nearly all in fruits and vegetables. But in some organ meats, there's a little bit there too. I take a look at vitamin K. It's in some cheeses and stuff, but it's in organ meats. It's not necessarily an essential one, but it's one that I don't necessarily eat what has it. So from a supplemental perspective, the things that I know that I eat that don't have a particular mineral or nutrient that I need, I will generally supplement. But I don't take an all-inclusive kind of supplement. I'll talk about that a little bit later toward the bottom of the slide. Folate. Well, you have 2 different things. There's vitamin B9. You have the folate itself, which is the natural B9 molecule, but you have a synthetic one called folic acid. You get folic acid from the laboratory, but our natural sources of folates comes from liver, greens, and beans. But the folic acid was developed to support a couple other things medicinally, but folic acid actually is a little bit easier to be absorbed in the body than folates. But if I had the choice, I'd take the folate. I'd rather go vitamin C. It's not just the vitamin C that comes in the pill that you're taking. It's the other 50 cofactors that go with it that help for flavonoids and your phytonutrients. I mean, there's just so many things that go with it when you're eating an orange or some other fruit or vegetable that has the vitamin C in it. Vitamin E, 8 different kinds of molecules make up what generically is called vitamin E. You have 4 tocopherols and 4 tocotrienols. You don't find them in any, not all 8 are contained in any single food, but nuts seem to be one of the primary sources of it. And it turns out that there is a lot of evidence that if you have literally that much tocotrienol in your brain, that when a stroke occurs, there's so much preventive action going on. There's 4 or 5 different things that actually prevent a lot of the damage that a stroke occurs. And many people who do have a fair amount of that vitamin E molecule end up, they suffer the stroke, but they don't have any side effects from it. And so it's something to consider, because there's a lot of research in that might be of benefit. Calcium, biggest problem is that they're in dairy and greens, and a lot of people don't necessarily go that direction. But they put a calcium pill and maybe an oxide or a carbohydrate, which means that in most cases it's probably going to end up in the toilet because it's just not very, very bioavailable. And so you have a problem with that. And so if you're going to get calcium, why not get it from the source, some kind of food? Iron, well, you have 2 different sources, from a plant source and from an animal source. And all of these, in this particular case, we're looking at these essential nutrients are both plant-based and animal-based. So if I'm looking at a plant-based iron, that's what they call a non-Hemi source. The Hemi basically is that molecule of the iron that gives you the red color in blood. But the Hemi sources come from your animals. So if I'm looking at the non-Hemi, depending on what the source is, to maybe 20% available to the body, it's absorbable. But if I'm looking at a Hemi source, I'm looking at 15 to 35%, significantly different. Zinc, a couple different choices there, seeds and shellfish and stuff. But the other things, you buy a multivitamin, a multi-nutrient, and B12 is one that I point out a lot. B12 is a cobalamin. The synthetic version goes through the stomach. It can't survive stomach acid. You take it under the tongue. That's a pretty good way, but that's methylcobalamin, not the cyanocobalamin that's usually found in the pill form. You'll find individual B12s that are made up of cyanocobalamin, but again, it's a waste of money because it will not do the body any good at all to speak. Now, they may have some that are coated that will get you past the stomach acid, but you got to read the literature on the pill bottle to know for sure what's going on. It's like the vitamin E. They'll advertise vitamin E, but it'll be the alpha tocopherol, and it's synthetic, and it's I'm going to say almost worthless. It just doesn't do what you need to have it done. It's just one of those kinds of things. So if I look at a carbohydrate in and of itself, it's just a molecule. So if I take a sugar molecule as a carbohydrate or starch or whatever, that's all it is. It's just a molecule, has a structure, but it doesn't have anything else. But when you put it into a food, let's say bread, okay, now I have that carbohydrate in there, but I also have fiber and I have water and I may have other kinds of proteins or whatever that may happen to be in that particular food group. In this case, they're saying this is a blueberry, which doesn't have your fats and your proteins in it, but they have a bunch of polyphenols and a whole bunch of phytonutrients. So if I get my carbohydrate from my blueberry, you get a couple of blueberries, there's probably 25 grams of carbs in there. It's just, but we don't typically sit down and eat a cup of blueberries. You may pick and choose a half a dozen or a dozen, and that kind of settles over. You throw it in your salad or on top of something. But there's carbohydrates in it. It can be just as count as high as the grams in bread and something else. But again, you're looking at the volume more so than what you're doing. Green peas and blueberries are very, very similar in the carbohydrate content. But you're not looking at we're thinking carbohydrate bread, but we're not thinking carbohydrate, the raw sugar or the starch molecule itself as a single individual molecule. So as an individual molecule, no, it has no essential requirement for our bodies. So if they are essential, why do experts recommend plant foods? Okay. So I look at things that have some level of uniqueness to them. And they're unique, but they're not what we call non-essential. So I need, if you go on a carbohydrate-free diet and you're not taking a fiber, you're going to find out right away that constipation is a major problem, because that fiber is what actually allows everything to go through the body, because proteins don't have any fiber in them at all. So if you're on a protein kind of diet, you're going to probably need some kind of fiber to get it through your gut. But if I'm looking at creatine, okay, that's uniquely animal, and that's your muscles, your muscle growth needs a creatine. Carnosine, your brain and your muscles. It's a really good antioxidant. Taurine, cardiovascular health. Your DHA and your omega-3s, primarily your brain and your eyes. But your EPA in that omega-3 is, again, now primarily cardiovascular health. So you're taking one thing that works both on the heart and the brain. Vitamin B12, a lot of things there. It's interesting, if you get older and you start suffering from a vitamin B12 deficiency, uniquely animal, vegetarians, vegans in particular, if they're not real careful about supplementing the B12, they can have some problems. And one of the known problems is the fact that a deficiency in vitamin B12 mimics Alzheimer's. So that becomes an issue. You go to a gerontologist, one of the first things they might do is give you a B12 shot to see if that resets everything. The hemi iron that I just talked about, you have hemi and non-hemi. Well, the hemi iron that comes from animals is the one that really provides the necessary gut support that you need. If I look at the other side of the equation, uniquely plant, the fiber, obviously you got a lot of cellulose and pectin and beta glucans and resistant starch. Now, resistant starch I wasn't real aware of until, I'm going to say, within the last couple of months. And I'd read something that says, okay, let's say you finish your spaghetti dinner and you put it in the refrigerator overnight. The cold will actually change. Resistant starch, and that resistant starch is, I'll cover in a slide down the road, is going to benefit you in your gut down the road. So I'm going to cover that one separately. But I have my prebiotics. These are basically fertilizer for your probiotics in your gut. You have polyphenols, your catechins from your green tea, and your resveratrol, your quercetin, curcumin, and some of these things, like the resveratrol and the curcumin, actually need a black pepper extract, piperine, in order to be more bioabsorbable in the body. Now, you may end up with just a few percent bioabsorbable, but the black pepper extract actually makes it like 1,000 times more absorbable in the body. And you got your thousands of phytonutrients, you got carotenoids, you got organosulfur materials, you got so many things there that are really and truly uniquely plant. But they work so well in the body at keeping us healthy. Are they essential? No, but they are darn important. So, hang up one. Let me see if I can finish this next slide and then go to break. Okay. Phytonutrients, we talked about those just a minute ago. Polyphenols, the quercetin, apples, onions, really good antioxidant. Your resveratrols, primarily your grapes, berries have a lot of it in there. Again, antioxidant. Curcumin, got my first curcumin plant out in the backyard growing. I sold some plumerias this weekend at a sale, and I bought a curcumin plant. I never had one before. But it comes from turmeric. It's really good for joint health, like metabolic health. Apigenin, parsley, celery, another antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. Your carotenoids, your lycopene, your basically tomatoes, good heart health medicine, prostate also. Lutein, eyes, comes from kale, spinach, green veggies. Anything with green veggies and colored veggies both give you the lutein. Zeaxanthin, eye health primarily. Astaxanthin, again, eye health. Comes from salmon, shrimp. But it's also good for your skin, your eyes, your cardiovascular health, brain health. A lot of things, just like the omega-3s. Your glucosinates, broccoli, kale. A lot of good studies are showing it's pretty decent cancer preventive for certain types of cancer. Great antioxidant, great for your gut health. Organosulfur compounds, again, the allicin from your garlic, your onions, great antioxidant. In fact, on the garlic, you peel it, if you crush it or you slice it or dice it, smash it, however you do, let it sit 10 or 15 minutes, because the allicin that you're trying to get actually is not available if you just throw it straight into the pot as soon as it's ready to roll. But you give it a chance to mesh a little bit. You're destroying some of the molecular boundaries in there, the barriers, wall barriers, and it actually creates a more of the beneficial material you need from that particular one. So if you're using the garlic, that's what I'd recommend. And we're about 20 minutes into this, so I'm going to go ahead and go to a commercial break at this time. Be back and see you in about a minute and a half.
What if many of the problems we associate with aging are not random? What if there are identifiable causes behind declining energy, chronic disease, and memory problems? We have been told that aging is simply something we must accept, that slowing down is normal, that growing older means growing weaker. But what if that's only part of the story? Why do some people remain active and engaged well into their later years? Why do others struggle with disease, fatigue, and declining health? What is happening beneath the surface? What processes drive aging? In Aging Sucks, researcher, educator, and author Red O'Loughlin explores what researchers have discovered about why we grow older. No medical degree required, no confusing jargon, just clear explanations of what researchers have discovered about the processes that influence aging. You cannot stop aging, but understanding its causes may help you make better decisions about your health, your future, and your quality of life. Because understanding comes before action. Action creates hope. Aging sucks. End the guesswork. There is hope.
Red O'Loughlin here talking about carbohydrates and their essentialness to our health. If you want optimal health, do you really need carbohydrates? And the answer is no. You can get all the carbohydrates you need from veggies. You don't need them from your rice and potatoes and pasta and corn and yeah, corn is a veggie. There's no doubt about that. But there are some sources of carbohydrate that you don't need the 40, 50, 60 grams a day that mostly occur when you start going down a different path of a food group containing carbs. So, but if I want to look a little bit further deep, we talked just the last slide. We talked about polyphenols, and we talked about phytonutrients. Okay, right now, if I'm looking at phytonutrients, a polyphenol is a subset of that. So I have quercetin, I already did this slide. How quickly I forget. Okay, moving right along. We have in our gut what they call a microbiome, and the proteins and the fats kind of go through there pretty quickly. But the fiber that's really needed in order to make our gut function the way it's supposed to, and I'm talking about the cellulose and pectin, it comes from apples and stuff. The resistant starch is your overnight cooling of your bread, your pasta, any kind of starchy material. Put in the refrigerator for a night or two, and you're going to find out you don't get near the spike of carbohydrate, that sugar spike that you would get. So if you were sitting there and you just had a nice piece of sourdough bread, whoosh, there goes the spike, your blood glucose. But if it's sitting in the refrigerator, all of a sudden it's going to go up, yeah, but not near as high. It's going to come back down. So that resistant starch is super critical as one of those prebiotics. So the fiber prebiotics, then it gets into the gut, and now you start pushing everything together. And when you have a happy gut, you have a happy brain. We're generally pretty good. But you get an upset stomach, and my goodness, there's just a lot of things that can happen. But you get the things through there. And one of the things I didn't put on the slide to begin with, it says prebiotics and fiber. You have probiotics that are already in our gut. Those are the flora and fauna that are down, the little live mechanisms in there that do all the chewing and that do the work of digesting your food. So I have my probiotics. And yes, I can buy them in pills. But I have another thing that most people have never heard of. It's called a postbiotic. And generally speaking, I get this resistant starch and other things, and they go through my gut, and they get out of the small intestines into the large intestines. And depending on what they are, if it's a resistant starch, now I get butyrate and some other things, acetates and propionates. But that is essentially what they call a short chain fatty acid. And that's extremely important because it's a postbiotic. So I can actually take postbiotics, prebiotics, and probiotics on the front end, but my body also makes postbiotics. So if I'm not getting any resistant starch or something else, I'm probably making fewer than what I need. But those short chain fatty acids are, that's where your anti-inflammatory, your immune health, super critical for your gut-brain axis. So you end up with supporting your gut, your large intestine. is now creating these short chain fatty acids that actually helps your mental health. So you got gut maintenance, you got blood stability, just so many things from those postbiotics that are created in your large intestine. We can choose two different ways to look at the way we eat. One way is to say, I'm just going to go ahead and eat something. And is it, I mean, like I said at the very beginning of the show, is a carbohydrate good or bad? Well, you don't need it as far as an essential food group. Our bodies do use carbohydrates in a couple different places, brain being one of them, but our body actually can make carbohydrates from protein and from fat in order to meet our body's requirements, like Eskimos. But if I'm looking at is it good or bad, that's probably not the right way to be looking at your health. Is this food good or bad? Okay, I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You know, there's probably some way I can justify, rationalize that that's good for my health. But that's not the way to be looking at things. You need to, I think, my personal opinion, is that if I'm choosing a food and I want to be able to support my mitochondria, I want to be able to support my signaling, my epigenetics. You know, I want to look at the things in my body that support repair and that fight damage. So from an aging perspective, in my book, Aging Sucks, I talk about our health being, or aging being, a battle between repair and damage. So I have a lot of things that are damaging my body, every cell in my body, every second of the day. I have a lot of things going on in my body to affect repairs on all that. And it turns out that the same things that cause damage cause repair enhancement. So, and those are your diet, your exercise, your stress management, and the quality of your sleep. So if you're in that happy Goldilocks zone in the middle, everything's fine. But if you're on the outside edges, too much or too little, now we start having a problem with the lifestyle choices, creating damage rather than supporting repair. So if I have a mindset and I look at my foods, okay, I have kale, I have tomatoes, I have good quality protein, maybe I have salmon, so I know I can get my omega-3s. I'm looking at, okay, that fried chicken has probably a lot of omega-6s, which is highly inflammatory, not to mention the carbohydrates on the stuff. Turns out that most of the stuff we really like tastes good, has great texture in the mouth. It's just so they make things so good nowadays. But I want to be able to give better thought to what I'm actually eating so that I can support those mechanisms in my body that fight damage, that support repair. So I actually end up with a healthier life down the road. So if I'm addressing aging from a positive perspective, then I'm probably going to be okay on my food choices. Okay. If I again look at the diversity of what I'm having, no single food group is going to provide everything I need. You know, just like the vitamin E. There's no single food that has all 8 molecules in it. But again, this takes a little bit of research, a little bit of study. But I think we just know you can't, I can go out there and have bacon and eggs. Okay, there's no carbohydrates in that. But if I have a big muffin or 2 or 3, that becomes a problem. If I have toast with it, maybe not too bad. 1 piece of toast, generally about 10 grams carbs. And so moderation, a little bit of research, a little bit of common sense. You know, if I have, spaghetti tonight for dinner and that's all fresh pasta, and that's fine. I'm going to be overloading carbs, but maybe I had a great week and I really need to celebrate. But 2 days now from I have my refrigerated pasta, spaghetti that's left over, I'm not going to get the same level of impact of blood sugar based on eating that. And the same thing applies to the bread and anything else. If you refrigerate, you're going to get far, far less. It's going to be a resistant starch. But the creatine, again, now you're getting something that can generate that muscle growth, the sulforaphane, your cancer prevention, anti-inflammatory, heart, gut, metabolic health, a lot of things with those sulfur molecules. Sulfur is a major, major contributor to repair. So if you're looking at during your sleep and you've had a fair amount sulfur-laden vegetables, great source of the repair mechanisms your body needs. Your butyrates, that's your short-chain fatty acids that form those postbiotics that your gut, your brain, and everything else needs. And toward the end here, one or two left. Okay, so if I look at damage and repair, which I just talked about a moment ago, I have plant foods, I have proteins, and fats. So I need structural barriers, building blocks, and that's your proteins. That's the raw building material. I add into that some sulfur and some other things. Now I start increasing my plant foods that can support repair, maintenance that's going on. But I also have a cellular architecture that's along with that outside barrier that my proteins are building. And so I need all of them to work together so that I have one complete unit. So if I'm eating proteins all the time, again, I'm not getting my essential fatty acids. It's going to affect my architecture in my body. If all I'm eating is plant foods and I never touch fats and proteins, again, another problem. So it's, again, a matter of you need proteins for the essential amino acids. You need the essential fatty acids, not a whole bunch of omega-6s. And you need the other things that are unique within the plant foods that help support our health. That you're going to get a fairly healthy, disease-resistant kind of body. So if I'm looking at things here, I want to stop thinking in terms of fats and proteins and carbs, or let's say fats versus proteins versus carbs. I really want to be looking at what does each food contribute? How does that make me healthy down the road? How can I optimize my health? And so, I ask myself, okay, what am I getting? What am I not getting? And if I know that, then I obviously have choices over what I can do. Now, I know that I don't get vitamin K2. I'm not eating enough of certain things to get the vitamin E I need as far as a full 8 molecules worth. And I know sure as can be that I'm not getting the vitamin D3 that I want at the levels I want. So those are three things that I myself supplement in because I know that I'm not getting them from my food. So if you were to sit there and do an assessment, and Google is there, AI is there, keep a record of what you're eating on a weekly basis. Just write it down. If you go to a restaurant, you order something, take a picture of that food that you ordered, and come back and say, AI, here's my list. What minerals, what vitamins, what macronutrients, what am I missing, and where should I get it from? So now at least up front that, okay, I'm not getting enough B12 because I'm not eating any animal products. I'm not supplementing B12, so I'm going to have a problem. Or if I'm supplementing B12, I'm getting the cyanocobalamin, that goes through my stomach and has, the stomach acid washes it out. So it's an awareness. That's what these programs are for, in order to provide information for people. So, hey, that's interesting. I'd like to know a little bit more. So we go from this show, awareness, to the next show, your own personal education, where okay, I agree. And then if you're on any kind of medicine or a doctor's protocol, don't just start changing things willy-nilly without at least talking to your pharmacist or talk to your doctor, because you don't want to have things screw up. Just because you're on a medicine, certain foods can interact with certain medicines, and that's not what you need. So from a disclaimer perspective, everything I'm talking about today is for awareness and education. And let me go ahead, and I think that's the last slide I have. The show today was brought to you on YouTube. If you are already a subscriber, great. We really and truly appreciate it. If you're not, please, seriously, we'd love to have you be a subscriber on USA Global TV and Radio Network and Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Now, our shows go out. It's international. We're out to over 60 countries in the world. And I found out today that even the shows that go out on YouTube are translated into over a dozen different languages. That's kind of neat. That's something I did not know. So, but Red O'Laughlin here, getting ready to sign off, and I will catch you next week on the Corner Bookstore, on the Wise Ones, and on Talking Heads. Take care, y'all. Take care. Bye.
People are searching for experts every day. Are they finding you, or are they finding someone else? Every day, professionals are building authority through media. We've already built the platform. USA Global TV and Radio. Over 14,000 shows streamed to over 60 countries. This isn't about becoming famous. It's about leverage, visibility, credibility, opportunity. One interview, one conversation, one show, repurposed into content, connection, and business growth. Most people assume hosting a TV show requires a studio, a production team, and a massive budget. Our television packages begin at $1,500 US per month. Professional production, global distribution, replay visibility, built for voices with something to say. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, and if this resonates with you, we should talk. USA Global TV and Radio, all rights reserved. Contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com.
How much of your value have you been giving away? Saying yes when the answer should have been no? Lowering your price to secure the opportunity? Giving more while receiving less? Over time, it adds up. Until one moment brings clarity, you've been giving away your value. This is not about working harder. This is not about doing more. It's about boundaries. It's about pricing. It's about respect. From Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck comes a direct and necessary message. Stop over-delivering. Stop underpricing your expertise. Stop negotiating against yourself. Because when you recognize your value, everything changes. Stop giving away your value. Boundaries, pricing, and the business of respect. Available now wherever fine books are sold and on Amazon. A film by USA Global TV and Radio. Executive producer Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Videographer and cinematic production Paul Garcia. Voiceover by Ed Wargas. Stop giving it away. Start owning it.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.